It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Quite right, Mr. President, including, of course, your good self. Who won the war? Was the nuclear material destroyed, or was it simply removed? Is Trump going to bomb again? Is he interested in regime change? Well, it depends which Truth Social or tweet you are talking about. Supporters of Iran don't know whether to agree with CNN and say that the nuclear industry was scarcely touched by Donald Trump's B-2 bombers, or whether to agree with voices in Iran who say that the matter was comprehensively set back, perhaps for many years. Strategic ambiguity or a state of chaos and confusion. And in the fog of war, what is that I see coming out of the sky over Tehran? It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
What the hell just happened? I mean, I really wish I knew. Donald Trump's been nominated by Israel, the much coveted endorsement by Israel for the Nobel Peace Prize. Yes, I'm not making that up. Donald Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping a war that he started. Israel was pulverized by Iran, especially in the last few days of the 12-day war, according to President Donald Trump. 11,000 buildings were destroyed by Iranian ballistic missiles, and over 30,000 were damaged. The skies over Tel Aviv were effectively unguarded, undefended, especially in the last few days. The air defenses of Israel were degraded to the extent that they asked for the ceasefire. They asked for it through their good friend Qatar, which denounced the breach of their sovereignty by their neighbor Iran. Nothing screams sovereignty like a foreign military base on your soil launching bombing attacks on your neighbor against your will, or at least as against the will you publicly stated. It is a state of absolute confusion, and it's not over yet. It's not over that yet in Gaza, that is for sure. Israel lost 7 soldiers with 11 critically wounded just yesterday in the Gaza Strip. The cracks that are appearing in the Israeli polity are such that people are openly now asking, what on earth are we continuing to fight for in Gaza? And the slaughter continues at the food aid distribution sites. People, 25, 40, 50 every day, are gathering to be fed, much like the Jews in the death camps of the Holocaust gathered to be washed in a shower, only to find that they were being showered by Zyklon B gas, which murdered them. The Palestinians are gathering for a piece of bread, and the people who gathered them there are killing them with tank shells and with bombs. The state of affairs inside Israel is mirrored in New York City. Israel has been defeated twice in 2 days, once in the war with Iran and a second time in the Democratic primary election in New York City, where AIPAC, where the lobby, where Bloomberg, where every billionaire, trillionaire in America threw everything they could to stop the left-wing Muslim candidate Zohran Mamdani from winning the Democratic nomination, and were absolutely crushed. Mamdani is the Democratic Party candidate in November for mayor of New York City. How about that then? The Israelis could scarcely contain their grief, and they're not finished in New York either. They will try to group behind another candidate, maybe the incumbent mayor, whose disgrace was such that he didn't even run in the Democratic Party candidate, but is running again for mayor. Or maybe they'll go for Lander, the Republican candidate. One way or another, it's not over yet, but the victory of an avowedly hostile, pro-Palestinian as mayor of New York City, where there are more Jews than in any city in the world outside of Tel Aviv, means one of two things. It means that almost all of the non-Jewish people in New York City voted for Mamdani, or much more likely, it means that from amongst the Jewish community themselves, Israel fatigue has well and truly sunk in. And these were its first fruits at the ballot box. And the same will be true in the midterms. Anybody who wants to run in the midterm elections on the line of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris towards the Israel-Palestine conflict is doomed to defeat. And that goes for Republicans as much as it goes for Democrats. But back to the war itself. The sanest voice that I have heard is the one that we've got coming up as our first guest this evening, Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi, as always, telling the truth, seeking to enlighten and not to propagandize. He said, I'm not saying Iran won a decisive victory over America and Israel. I'm not saying that it was a clear-cut victory, but Iran had the upper hand at the end. And no one, if they're being truthful, can seriously doubt that. In the last few hours, before the ceasefire took effect, a two-tier ceasefire where Iran had to stop firing before Israel stopped firing, a whole lot of damage was done. Many people were killed. A whole lot of buildings were destroyed in the capital of Tehran in a last frenzied effort to assassinate anybody of importance that they could possibly get their hands on. But it didn't mask the fundamental truth that strategically Israel has suffered an historic defeat, because nobody ever, not Nasser, not the 1973 war, not anybody, anywhere, anytime, has ever struck inside the 1948 borders of Israel with the precision and the power that Iran, night after night after night, pulverized Tel Aviv, Haifa, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and all these strategic centers. Beersheba, never forget Beersheba. The Iranian ballistic missiles were uncontested by the end. Despite that mutt, that punch bag, Piersmorgan, who was knocked around the ring by the lightweight lady, Candaceowens, last night. I mean, lightweight only physically, of course. She sent from God a voice of clarion, clarity, and truthfulness. She beat Piersmorgan up. He told me when I was last on his show that only one or two Iranian missiles had managed to get through the Israeli defenses. Well, those one or two certainly did a lot of damage. No, it's never happened before. All these Arab countries, all these Muslim countries, with all their armies, their navies, and their air forces, with all the missiles that they buy, all the bombs that they buy as protection money from the United States of America, none of them have ever landed one punch on Israel, no matter how many Palestinians it was slaughtering. But Iran landed hundreds and hundreds of ballistic missiles, some of them hypersonic ballistic missiles, which landed right on the nose of their target, in the end, uncontested. This changes forever the narrative so far as Israel is concerned. They are no longer the invincible superpower of the Middle East. Iran can now rival them at any point in time. Now, of course, Israel will rebuild. It will seek to, like a little Zelensky, sneak around the NATO powers looking for replacement munitions, replacement air defense systems. Of course they will. But Iran will be retooling and restocking also. And finally, China and Russia have arrived on the field in that regard. So by the time of the next round, Israel will have recovered some of its strength, but Iran, which finished stronger, will have recovered much of its also, and maybe then more some. What about the nuclear material? Well, of course, the nuclear question was a ruse to begin with. Iran is religiously, by fatwa, precluded from developing weapons of mass destruction, even though weapons of mass destruction supplied by us were used against them, including against Professor Marandi, who was twice attacked by gas supplied by Western countries during the Iraq-Iran war. So nobody, not any intelligence service anywhere, including, crucially, that of the United States, has ever claimed that Iran has built a nuclear war, against my advice, as you already know. So the issue of nuclear was always a device, a ruse, a deceit to manufacture consent in Western countries for the role that their governments wanted to play in the attack on Iran. It's always been about regime change. They've been trying to change the regime in Iran since it was founded. For 45 years, they have been trying to regime change in Tehran. But it has all failed. They've tried everything. They've tried sanctions that would make your eyes water, your eyes bleed. They've tried assassinations. They've tried terrorism. They've recruited gangs of Kurdish mercenaries, lunatic mercenaries in the MEK based in Albania, a bizarre cult led by a woman whose husband disappeared but has never been acknowledged to be dead. Maybe he's in a cupboard somewhere. They have recruited all kinds of people, Afghans, Indians, by the score, by the hundreds, to sabotage and to reconnaissance for acts of terrorism. And then finally, a few weeks ago, they openly declared war. In a sneak attack, Israel murdered scores of commanders in another shocking Iranian display of unpreparedness. How many of their leaders are going to be killed by Israeli terrorists and Israeli-backed terrorists? But Iran recovered. It showed the systemic depth of the Iranian government, that they were able to recover from that first shock blow when so many of their top people were murdered, and come back fighting, to the extent that Donald Trump himself and Bannon, his vicar on earth, explicitly stated this ceasefire was for Israel. It was Israel that was taking a horrific battering by the end of the war. So there's nobody doubting, I think, who finished stronger. The only doubt is where the nuclear material is. Now, the IAEA, if the Iranians have any sense, will never again step foot in their country after Iranian procured documents proved that the IAEA was spying for Israel, spying on the plants themselves, spying on the enriched material and reporting it directly back to Israel, but crucially, spying on the scientists who were then later murdered. Their names, their pictures, their addresses were all given to the people who murdered them. So the IAEA is a busted flush. As predictably, we ought to have seen it from the start. When on the eve of the war, in the midnight hours, they delivered a report, a false report, that Iran had somehow gone off the reservation on the nuclear question, was evidence enough. But now that we know the role the IAEA have been playing, it's unlikely that any of them will ever set foot in an Iranian nuclear plant again. So we'll never know what happened to the enriched uranium, 600 kilograms of it. We'll never know if more is being enriched. We'll never know if Iran will follow the Israeli plan of strategic ambiguity, never telling anyone whether they have the bomb or not. Why not? It's worked for Israel. For 40 years, Israel has illegally held maybe hundreds of nuclear weapons without allowing a single inspection by anyone of their nuclear material. So if it's good enough for Israel, it's surely good enough for Iran. And this line was endorsed, quite importantly, by Mr. Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, who poured scorn on the IAEA, and they're now bleating about the whereabouts of Iran's nuclear material. My last point is this. This isn't over. Netanyahu isn't over. In fact, he knows if he doesn't get back into the war game pretty damn quickly, he might be out of office, given the shattering blow that all of this has been to the Israeli political system. So I believe that Israel will continue its low-grade and maybe high-grade attacks against the Islamic Republic in Iran. And that can be withstood by the Iranian system. They could trade tit for tat, sporadically, in exchange for attacks one on the other. Question is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is now so uncontrollable that it would not surprise anyone if this very evening, having declared the nuclear question closed, having described Iran's nuclear capability as being obliterated, destroyed by the finest dam-buster raid since the Second World War, having praised and heaped praise on 20-year-old pilots who in the dead of the night conducted a military raid of such precision and power that we should all stand agog at their brilliance. It would not surprise me if Donald Trump this evening tweeted that he'd decided to go back like a dog returning to its own vomit. It would not surprise me at all if, stung by the criticism of the scum of CNN, of the failing New York Times, Trump was somehow persuaded to do it all over again. I'm sorry that I cannot bring you more positive or optimistic news, and it would please me greatly if I could hail a great Iranian victory, a great and strategic Israeli defeat, but I cannot. I can only say that in round one, Iran finished the stronger. It's all coming up tonight on the mother of all talk shows, Professor Marandi, up next. Stay tuned.
A new dawn has broken, has it not?
He had that Clinton thing. His eyes were round and big and smiley, and he was very charming.
He became this incredible pop idol kind of prime minister.
I think most people who have dealt with me think I'm a pretty straight sort of guy, and I am.
New Labour was backed by the most powerful media interests because they realised he was representing them.
He was caught red-handed trading policy in return for hard cash from a businessman.
America has no truer friend than Great Britain.
Both Bush as well as Tony Blair are now wanting to plunge the world into a holocaust.
JP Morgan paid him off for the Iraq war. The man is a war criminal.
Is Tony Blair a war criminal? In my opinion, yes.
Most definitely.
The pursuit of money has become the dominant theme in your life.
All these relationships are, in most people's estimation, corrupt relationships.
No previous Labour Prime Minister has behaved in this shameful, money-grubbing way.
How do you sleep at night? You know, it's that. It's as a person.
Okay, the poll tonight: has Trump's Iran attack launched a new Gulf War? That's the Gulf War which he wants credit for stopping, though he started it. Yes or no? You can answer and vote on my Telegram, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on my Twitter, on the YouTube community poll, and on the YouTube stream. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give a thumbs up to the show, and tell all your friends and contacts that we are now on air and about to talk to the voice of integrity, truth, and honesty in Tehran, Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free on in the United States and Canada on +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522. And the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Professor Marandi, we are more than delighted to see you safe after such an horrific period of more than 2 weeks. People all over the world look out for you, pray for you, and look forward to hearing your analysis of what has been happening and, crucially, what might happen next. Thanks for joining us. My takeaway is that this is not over yet. Is it yours?
As always, I agree with you, George. I don't think this is over. The Zionist regime, as long as it continues to exist, as long as it is an ethno-supremacist regime that sees the rest of humanity as subhuman, there will never be peace in this region. And they will never tolerate the people of the region standing up against this barbaric genocide and this barbaric ethnic cleansing that we're now seeing in the West Bank, taking on new dimensions. So I agree, Iran won round one, despite the blitzkrieg attack and the murder of many commanders and senior officials and the slaughter of so many innocent people, neighbors, families, children and grandchildren of these commanders and these scientists and these academics that were targeted. And it's interesting that after they had murdered all these people and their neighbors and their families, because they take out whole apartment buildings to kill one person, and Western media would glorify their actions and call it a intelligence coup, whereas it was just crude murder being carried out against people whose homes and families were, it was clear to everyone where they were and where they lived. But Iran regrouped, the armed forces struck back, the Iranian people, most importantly, they rallied, and the Iranians today, George, are more united than I've ever seen in my life. And it is like during the Saddam Hussein invasion, the Western-backed Saddam Hussein invasion against Iran. The unity that I see today reminds me of the unity that we saw in the 1980s.
Now, Donald Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping the war. We'll come to that in a minute. But he started the war. He started it actually before America got involved. He must have green-lighted Netanyahu's sneak attack on Iran. Indeed, having claimed it was not his war, when he thought it was successful, he claimed credit for it. He claimed that they were operating as a team. We mustn't forget that point, mustn't we?
Absolutely not. I think he may probably get the Nobel Peace Prize because he is, after all, NATO's daddy. And I think also that it's becoming increasingly clear to everyone that the whole negotiation process was a deception. It was deceit. They were plotting behind the scenes to strike Iran from almost the beginning, perhaps before the beginning of the negotiations, but definitely after the U.S. suddenly shifted its negotiating position. And we all recall how the night before this murderous assault and an attack, unprovoked and illegal, that Trump said he's against war and he's against an attack. But then the day after, he came out gloating and, as you rightly pointed out, basically took credit for everything. But gradually, as things began to change and as the tide began to turn, we saw Netanyahu become increasingly desperate. And that is why Trump entered the war. But even after the US attack, which according to Western intelligence agencies was a failure, even after that, Netanyahu's fortunes began to continue to go downhill. And he was literally begging the United States to stop the war. So the regime, alongside the United States, and with the support of the collective West, and the indifference of all these regimes in our region, every single one of them except for Yemen, either they collaborated or they did nothing and just made statements. Despite all that, Iran defeated this coalition. Iran defeated the Israeli regime. And we saw that before the secession of I can't call it a ceasefire because Iran has not accepted a ceasefire. Before the halt in military fire, we saw that during the last 2 hours, the Iranians were hammering the Israeli regime from north to south. And as Trump admitted, the regime took a major battering. And as Bannon, as you rightly pointed out earlier, said that this was all about saving the Israeli regime because they were in serious trouble. So round one clearly goes to the people of Iran whose only sin is to support the Palestinian people since the inception of the revolution. The Iranians have been the only country honestly supporting the Palestinian people alongside Yemen after the revolution 10 years ago. That is Iran's sin. That is why Iran has been accused of human rights violations, terrorism, producing a nuclear weapon. All of these accusations are simply made up in order to help the Israeli regime to marginalize Iran and to help the regime subjugate the Palestinian people.
Some things have become clear when the pretender to the throne, the peacock throne as it once was known, stolen throne actually from India, with the jewels stolen out of it by the English and now in the crown of King Charles, but that's another set of stories. But on the peacock throne was once the Pahlavi dynasty, who were themselves pretenders. The British plucked an army sergeant, I think, and made him the first shah, sidelining the actual traditional Persian royal family. But again, that's another story. But Pahlavi has blocked Donald Trump on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm not making this up. That would seem to indicate that his ambitions of restoration are at least now put to bed. Do you think?
Well, if he ever thought that he would ever return to Iran and to have any role in even running an elementary school, he is completely mad. He is the corrupt son of a corrupt family that stole billions of dollars of Iranian assets when fleeing the country. And he has been supporting, he and the other terror groups that the United States backs, and the other groups that the United States has funded over the last few decades, all of them have supported sanctions. All of them have supported terrorism. All of them have supported war against Iran. And they think that ordinary Iranians would ever support them? They're mad. Either they're mad or the money is so good that they're willing to say anything and do anything to receive the funding from the United States. They must have been wasting those billions of dollars over the past 45 years in gambling and in corruption. Otherwise, I don't know why anyone would need to behave in such a ridiculous manner.
Now, you don't have any state secrets, and even if you did, you wouldn't impart them over the airwaves. But what do you think has happened to the Iranian nuclear material? And will it now continue the Iranian nuclear program?
Well, if we accept Western intelligence agencies and American intelligence agencies, what they say, and accept the fact, as they put it, that the Iranian nuclear program is largely intact and that it has only been slightly damaged and set back a few months, then that shows how competent Iranian engineers are and how sophisticated the Iranian leadership is, that it is so capable of defending its key assets across the board, and how the Islamic Republic of Iran, despite this blitzkrieg, was able to regroup so quickly and defeat this ethno-supremacist regime and its allies in Washington. That aside, though, I think that the bigger defeat for Trump and for the Israeli regime is that Iran subsequently said, based on the decision made by Parliament today, that we're not going to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency into Iran anytime soon, until we're fully satisfied with the security of our nuclear assets. And that could mean forever, because as long as Iran does not feel secure, as long as Iran believes that the United States or the Israeli regime may bomb its nuclear assets, then they won't allow these people in. And it's very interesting, George. The internet, when the Israeli regime carried out this blitzkrieg and murdered women and children and bombed Iranian national radio and television, and that's also another story. We saw women presenters, both on radio and television and for children's programs, stand their ground as they were being bombed. But you never see that in the Western media. They don't call these Iranian women heroes. It's only a particular type of woman that they call heroes. Those who are those who are obedient to their masters in the West. But the Iranians will not let them back into the country, the IAEA inspectors, until they feel satisfied about security. And that may never happen again, because when the West supports bombing Iran, when the Israeli regime was striking nuclear sites, which could have led to contamination, radioactive contamination, and a catastrophe, Western regimes were all saying Israel has the right to defend itself. Just like when it's carrying out the genocide in Gaza, the Holocaust in Gaza, they say Israel has the right to defend itself. When it's bombing apartment blocks in Beirut, they say Israel has the right to defend itself. So when Western regimes behave like that, when the International Atomic Energy Agency's chief refuses to condemn attacks on Iran's peaceful nuclear program, then why should Iran ever allow them in? So I think that this was a huge defeat for the United States. A, they no longer have access to the nuclear program. They no longer have information about the nuclear program. B, even those segments of Iranian society that were considered to be liberal and Western-oriented, and who believed a lot of the propaganda coming from the Western-owned Persian media, their worldview has changed. The Western narrative in Iran is broken. No one trusts the West anymore. People have seen how the West targets women and children, how CNN and Fox News are the same. When the CNN may hate Trump, but when they kill Iranians, when the Zionists kill Iranians, they're all the same. Breitbart and the New York Times, they're all the same. And this, I think, is a major catastrophe for U.S. influence in Iran, because they've united the people, they've woken up a younger generation who did not see the revolution or the imposed war that the West imposed on Iran. And now that is going to make things much more difficult for the United States in the months ahead. And finally, if the Israeli regime does strike Iran again, it will get a battering worse than before, because the Israelis gave it their best shot. And we have to keep in mind, what the Israeli regime has is the best technology that the West has to offer, far better than anything that has ever been given to Ukraine. And now the Iranians are learning about their weaknesses and about their enemy's strengths. And the Iranians are swiftly going to prepare themselves for the next round. So hopefully, if the Israeli regime is stupid enough and foolish enough to attack Iran again, hopefully the next round will be the knockout blow for Iran, defeating the Israeli regime.
And yet, with your former hat of Professor of American Studies on, you must have been amazed at the result in New York yesterday with the election of a left-wing, a socialist, explicitly socialist, albeit of the American kind, Muslim, albeit of the American kind. But the Israel lobby threw absolutely everything at that young man of, I think, 33 years old. There's nothing they didn't say about him, his faith, his ideas. The billions were deployed by Bloomberg and others, and the entire imperialist media in the United States were all concentrating their fire on this young man who emerged victorious. What does that tell you?
I think it shows that the United States is changing and that people are waking up, even though in the second round, I'm pretty sure that these Democrats will join the Republicans to stop him. But whether he becomes mayor or not, this is a major defeat for the Zionists and for the neocons and the establishment. Young people across the United States are waking up. George, you cannot hide a genocide forever. People will wake up. They'll see what's happening. They see the reality on the ground. For 21 months, they've been carrying out a genocide. And then they try to distract people's attention away by demonizing Iran. We saw all the Western media suddenly attack Iran. And despite the fact that Iran has been demonized for 4.5 decades, people didn't take the bait. People didn't believe it. People continue to support Iran and oppose U.S. aggression. They no longer believe the nonsense that the West has been putting out against Iran, or these Arab oil and gas-rich dictators who've been using their media to promote sectarianism and racism and religious hatred. People are no longer believing this. It's changing. It will take time, and I don't know if he will be the mayor, and if he does become the mayor, if he will remain true to what are his principles today. But it is a sign of change. We see young Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Hindus, the young lady at MIT who made that fantastic speech in defense of the Palestinian people, they're bringing about change. And that's why, as I've said before, even though we're living in very, very dark times and very, very dangerous times, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And these young people, guided by those who are older and who understand the history of empire, hopefully they'll bring about a situation ultimately where we can live more comfortably with one another and protected by the rule of law, rather than the empire lashing out at whoever it wants, whenever it wants.
Will we hear from the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, tomorrow? We haven't heard from him yet.
I don't know if we're going to hear from him tomorrow, but he is so popular now. People across the country are so thankful for his leadership and the way in which from the very beginning he stood his ground and told the people that we are going to win this war. And people across the world are now turning to him. People from across the region, despite the attempts of decades, to create sectarian and racist and religious hatred, people are looking to him as the person who defeated the empire, who defeated Zionism, and who continues to support the Palestinian people. And hopefully he and others will continue this resistance until ultimately the Israeli regime has been defeated like the apartheid regime in South Africa. The only way for peace in this region ultimately is for the end of supremacism, is for the dismantling of ethno-supremacism, and for equality among all people in Palestine. And the fact is that these foolish and bloodthirsty Zionists, if they were sane, they would recognize that this would be to their benefit.
Amen. Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi, thank you as always for that very powerful and illuminating interview. Professor Marandi is the Professor of English Literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. Let me take a quick break. Then it's your calls coming up next. Reza in California is the first call. I hope it's not Reza Pahlavi. Let's hear from him after this quick break.
What a great show this is! I listened to it, I thought, wow, what a great show. I've called into your show today, George, because I'm a great caller. Probably the greatest caller you've ever had. I really am. The only way your show could be better is if it had more of me, Donald J. Trump, in it. You keep talking about me, George. You do. I've heard it, I have. So many of the American people, the best people, listen to your show. And I've heard them crying about me. I have, and I listen and I go, ooh, America, don't cry. Don't cry. You need to be careful what you say about me, George. You don't want me to put a tariff on your show like I did with China. And then you'll come running for my help, just like little Zelensky. You know, I know you will. I know these things. Make the mother of all talk shows great again. That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do, George. We're gonna boost your ratings. Donald is gonna boost them bigly. I'm giving your show the Trump bump. You're welcome, George. Thank me. And remember, nobody talks like me. Nobody calls like me. And absolutely nobody ends a phone call like me. I'm hanging up now. Not because I finished, but because I won.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
That is brilliant. What was little Zelensky doing in that NATO photograph in the second or third row with Starmer in an even less auspicious place? He's not even in there. There he is there. What is he doing there amongst the NATO leaders when he's not in NATO? He's actually picking their pockets of all those around them. And what about this runt, the head of NATO, calling Trump daddy? Was he being spanked at the time in a pair of lederhosen? Has Trump's Iran attack launched a new Gulf War? Yes or no? 33,000 have voted in this poll. Let's go to California. Who wouldn't? Well, Reza wants to talk about the ceasefire and Trump. Go ahead, Reza.
Assalamu alaikum, George. Honorable Sir George Galloway.
Alaikum salam.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to speak to the man, the myth, the legend, who continually fights for the oppressed, the weak, and the truth. You are the man we should all aspire to be. Thank you so much for what you do and continue to do. I discovered you in 2006 during the Hezbollah-Israeli war when you were spanking the Sky News blonde reporter when she was trying to tell you that Israel was winning, and that's the first time I ever heard you say, well, it looks like they're getting a pretty good hiding. You pointed to the screens. I couldn't stop laughing. So yes. In regards to what's going on right now, I honestly believe it's a blessing to have, as much as I hate it. I used to hate Donald Trump so much, but I honestly believe it's a blessing to have him as a president because he has done nothing since he came into presidency before and now than to cause more destruction for Israel, make America a more dangerous place to live and more stain on the country. And he has done nothing but to make Iran more powerful and a power region since he became into power. And if you look at everything that's been happening since 1979, Israel has been isolated, and Iran is the one that has risen like cream to the top. And in regards to some of these missiles that went over to the Qatar Air Base, apparently the missiles hit. I think they're giving you fake news. I'm not sure, but from what I'm hearing from my family members back home, that the missiles hit, and and some of the things that have been going on. There's a lot of fake news going on about what's going on in Israel. But I want to thank you for everything you've done, and if you can touch upon that.
If you think about it, 11,000 houses and buildings destroyed, more than 30,000 damaged, but we hardly saw a fraction of that because of a total news blackout and a punishment of years in prison for Israeli citizens found taking photographs or video of the damage. We only know for sure about that damage because President Trump himself told us, and Steve Bannon, his vicar on earth, told us. So the truth is, of course, hidden in the fog of war, but it ultimately always will out. Reza in California, enjoy the sunshine there. Scan the QR code now and leave a comment on the YouTube stream, and I'll read it out. Joanne Nayeri, a good friend of the show, sends us 11 euros. Thank you very much, Joanne. She says, please get Miko Peled back on Moats. And Deanna Graham says, who's your daddy? Ruta, the head of NATO, calls Trump daddy. More like a petulant child. They are sucking up for Ukraine. Trump said Zelensky was very nice this time. Obedient. Well, yeah, I mean, I take your point, Deanna, although it wasn't a child that came to mind when I saw Ruta make that comment. It was more a kind of S&M vision that came into my mind, but that shows you the difference between you and me. The problem is Trump says a different thing about Zelensky every single time. He said he was going to finish the Ukraine war in 24 hours, in a day, in a week. But it's been 6 months, and America is still supplying Zelensky with money, intelligence, and weapons. And so the war drags on, not very well from their point of view. Sammy Git says Iran keep making mistake after mistake, from rejecting nuclear defense to not using China's tech and industrial base for their air power, to trusting India and now agreeing to Trump's ceasefire. And Common Man 80 says Israel will attack Iran again and blame it on Iran as soon as Israel is able to rearm. You heard it here first. And Nicola Curtin says, I think Starmer's attempted clampdown on protests by proscribing Palestine action is to cover for his defeat, resulting in his inability now to send parts for weapons to Israel. Of course, I'm totally against sending any parts to Israel, but to concentrate on that is a mistake. Israel's war capacity would not be appreciably damaged if they got no British parts. It's a bit of a cop-out, really, for certain politicians to constantly focus on the British contribution to the Israeli war machine. The Israeli war machine is an American war machine, and that's what we should be saying more clearly. Ali is in England, in Leeds, wants to talk about the 12-day war as it will forever be known. Ali, go ahead.
Firstly, George, I want to thank you for giving us the unfiltered truth for the last couple of weeks. I'm sure a lot of the public are confused what the actual truth was, but you were steadfast and you told the whole world what the truth actually was. And secondly, just want to thank Professor Marandi. Like, no one's made me more proud to be an Iranian than him. He's been there, he put his life at risk, and he's given us the truth, no matter what the danger was in it for him. And I heard the phone calls that Mossad did to the army generals, because I speak Iranian, and the words they were using disgusted me. They were threatening generals and army soldiers, their children, 4-year-old children. They were threatening in the most vulgar, disgusting language I've ever heard in my life, and using the Persian language. And they were threatening the general, saying, if you don't leave your house now, we're going to murder your kids. We're going to send your children. We're going to send your wife to hell. They used those disgusting words about children. These people have no limits. And it kind of backed exactly what I thought last week when I called, because I knew it was about regime change. And when it failed, they obviously told Trump to call Qatar and then mediate a ceasefire because they were getting so severely damaged. Honestly, this was. I'm sure they've got Trump by the ballsack. I'm sure the Zionist lobby have Trump by the ballsack, because there's no way in hell that they could. I mean, Trump, the way he delivers the messages is like a child, and he's only a mouthpiece. He's there to deliver the news to get as much shock and as much attention on it as possible. He's just a mouthpiece. He has no say in anything. He's held by the ballsack by the Zionist lobby, and I'm happy to see the world waking up.
I don't know about that, Ali. I think they definitely have something on him, even if it's only the vast amount of money that they gave him, and he's hoping they might give him again, either for his own campaign or perhaps for one of his children. It's true that it looks very much from time to time that he is thoroughly compromised by them. And then he cuts loose and goes rogue and talks about them and to them in a way that no other American president ever has, at least not in public. So I don't think it's as clear-cut as that. I think there's a struggle inside the American deep state. You might call it a struggle for the ear, for the soul, for the direction of Donald Trump. One section of the deep state and the military-industrial complex want to go one way. Another part of the American population, the ones that have got a vote, millions of them, the blue-collar, MAGA, Steve Bannon types, they're pulling him in a different direction. And he goes one way, and then he goes the other. The final outcome, of course, we'll see in time. But the struggle for Donald Trump is very much a constant struggle. Ali, thanks for that. Big thanks, too, to this week's top donors who visited the moats.tv website. James Glass, Po Tham, Lark Kerr, Greg Rochlin, and David Turner. Thank you all very much. Been a big week for Moats. A massive thank you. Please do become a Moats donor tonight and give what you can to support the show. Mike is in Toronto on Iran. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi.
Go on, Mike. What a pity, because he said he wanted to have a fight with me. Do try and get him back. Now, look, it was our largest ever week for the podcast. We're now in the top 25 political podcast downloads in the United Kingdom, the highest we've ever charted in this country. We're the #1 political podcast in Tunisia, and we're in the top 5 in Turkey, the UAE, and Singapore. In the top 20 in Norway, South Africa, Egypt, New Zealand, Hong Kong, and in the top 25 in India. My goodness, there must be a lot of podcasts in the hit parade in India. You can download the Moats podcast by scanning the QR code now on your screen. Have we got Mike in Toronto back again? Mo. We've got Mo. Go ahead, Mo.
Hey, George, how are you? How you been, man? I just want to say a big fan.
Alhamdulillah. Are you in Rafah, in Gaza?
Yeah, I'm near. I don't want to say where I'm at. I'm in the region, near. It's better if I just don't say, but I'm near.
Okay, yeah.
You know how it is down here. Basically, like, how we see it down here, George, and this is what I wanted to ask you. We see it totally different. Trump went down to Saudi Arabia. He took money. But before that, all of a sudden, he fell out with Netanyahu, and they're not friends anymore. And all of a sudden, the media all of a sudden turned against them, and all of a sudden, they're not friends anymore. Then after that, Iran happened. Come on, you want to tell me, George, you don't see what's going on, that they went down there and they actually cleaned them out clean, took the money, and then they're ready to do some other stuff with it together?
Who did?
No, the Israelis and the Americans and the Saudis.
Well, they took a lot of gold and diamonds, not just from Saudi Arabia, but from the UAE and Qatar also.
Exactly.
They even took a new Air Force Two
Thank
back.
you. Thank you.
I've got no doubt whatsoever that the neighboring Arab regimes are collaborators with the
100%
Israeli
of that. And
American war
I
on
live,
Iran.
I live in one of those neighborings, and I'm telling you yes. I'm telling you yes. I'm sorry I can't
I've
say
got no
where
doubt
I am,
at all about that. That's why I had to laugh out loud at the complaints about sovereignty being breached when Iran made
laugh out loud. We
performative attacks on the bases nearby. Go on, go on, Mo.
No, I'm just, George, I just want, people are seeing it from the CNN. I have CNN, I have Fox, I have everything, and I'm watching everything. But the mother of all talk shows gets it straight, and I just wanted to give you from inside here how we see it. This is a coup. It's a game. It's the biggest theatrical act we've ever seen in my whole life, and it is funny that people are falling for it.
Well, stay safe, Mo. God bless you and the people around you. The war certainly hasn't stopped so far as Gaza is concerned, neither in terms of Israeli casualties, but in the 10 times, 20 times greater daily casualties amongst Palestinian civilians in Gaza, and now also in the West Bank. Some comments just before the break. The fact that Iran stood up and retaliated against Israel and the US attacks made Iran the winner. Iran gained the respect and admiration of the world. And Claudio says, thankfully, the Iranians acted with such restraint and diplomacy, much like the Russians' approach. It's a stark contrast to that of the collective West. Well said, Claudio. And Marco F. sends €6. Thank you, Marco. He says, can you say something about the 700 arrested for suspicion of collaboration with the Israeli Mossad in Iran? How many do you think were from Mossad? I've no idea, actually, but did allude to the Iranian and Indian agents that were unmasked. A huge number of deportations have taken place of Afghan and Indian citizens. I think that the American planes used Indian airspace. Thus, the government of Narendra Modi put itself in the war party, and I don't think Iran will ever forget that. Let's take one last call before the break. Timur is in Burnley, in England, on Iran and Israel. Go ahead, Timur.
Greetings, Mr. Galloway. How are you? I hope you're doing well. I wanted to mention a couple of things. As we know that Russia offered Iran the latest anti-air defense systems and also a mutual defense pact. However, Mr. Pezeshkian, in his wisdom, turned it down. And we saw the shortcomings of that because of that unwise decision. Also, Iran is friends with both Russia and China, both of whom are at the cutting edge of military technology. However, Iran doesn't have any air force. I mean, that's absolutely pathetic. They could have got the 5th-gen fighter jets from both Russia and China. We've all seen how effective the Chinese fighter jets were vis-a-vis the skirmish they had in against India just recently. And finally, I would like to ask your opinion about something. We know. The Iranian government is trying to carry on reforms. As we know, there's a large chunk of segment of population in Iran, which is I can say westernized, liberal / secular kind of people. And don't you think this lack of reforms is actually created this pool from which agencies like Mossad and CIA could have a recruitment because these people were fed up with the restrictions and everything. So I would say I would like to ask your opinion. Don't you think that the Iranian government should actually increase the speed of these reforms so that there are those grievances could be minimized and so these people cannot be used again in the future by Mossad and CIA using their grievances against the Islamic rule. And finally, if I might just ask you, don't you think that Russia, China, and Iran should now come into a military alliance? I think that's the need of the hour, in my humble opinion. Thank you very much, George.
Well, very cogently put. I take the old-fashioned view that what happens inside Iran is the business of the Iranians, not of mine or yours or Keir Starmer's or Donald Trump's. The reforms, as you put it, are represented by the very president you prayed in aid as responsible for the disastrous decision not to take the offer of Russian air defenses. We don't know, of course, if that story is completely true. We do know that President Putin said that it was Iran which declined certain areas of military cooperation, and we do know that the agreement, strategic partnership agreement between Russia and Iran excluded military commitments on either side. And it's a fair inference that you have made that this was a decision made in Iran rather than in Moscow. Whoever made that decision, if that decision was made a very, very foolish mistake, in my view, and should correct it immediately. And that the alliance between China, Russia, and Iran needs to now be copper-bottomed, armor-plated in the toughest steel, and Iran should become the knuckle, the joint of the Russian and Chinese developments in the world, the BRICS and the SCO and the Belt and Road Initiative and the North-South Corridor. The Iranians should make themselves an indispensable hinge for the Russia-China New World Order. And that, of course, cannot exclude military. I have no idea why Iran has no air force, but it certainly knows now that it needs one, and it better get one before round two comes along. I said earlier that Israel was defenseless in the last few days of the Iranian counterattacks, but Tehran was defenseless from the very first day to aerial attack by Israel and then by the United States. And that's something, if they've any sense, they will rapidly change. As to the pool that you describe of pro-Western Iranians, that's there and will always be there. After all, Iran was, under the Shah, a part of the Western world, and with the same drug and drink and rock and roll culture and so on. And they still exist, but they are a tiny minority of the Iranian population. The vast majority of the Iranian population have never encountered a CNN camera or a BBC reporter or a visiting businessman in the lobby of a fancy hotel in Tehran. These Iranians are not the real Iranians. Well, they are real Iranians, but they are not representative of the vast majority of Iranians. If you go into the rural Iran, if you go into the religious Iran, you will find tens of millions of supporters of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And that's where the strength of the system lies, not in the lobbies of the aforementioned five-star hotels. Let me take a quick break. And after that break, the one and only Sabrina Salvati, host of Sabby Sabs Podcast, and a great favorite of ours, will be joining us. Stay tuned.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement. A big thank you to all our wonderful listeners, as the Mother of All Talk Shows podcast is now one of the most listened to political podcasts in the entire world. We are the #1 English-speaking political podcast in the Middle East, and in the last year alone have charted in the top 10 in podcast land in Pakistan, Russia, and China. Like, rate, and subscribe to the Moats podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to be a part of the fastest rising independent news show in the world.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
Let's get a reading from Sabrina Salvati, host of the Sabby Sabs Podcast, co-host of Revolutionary Blackout Network, about the dramatic events overnight in New York. First, Sabby, if you don't mind, has morning come to America now that the Democratic candidate for mayor of New York is a man of color, a Muslim, and a socialist? Who'd have thunk it?
Who would have thunk it? It's a really interesting time right now in the United States. Everyone is talking about this race now. Zoran Mandami, he just won the Democrat primary. He beat Andrew Cuomo, who obviously had more money. He's backed by billionaires, corporate interests. He was previously governor in New York, and he had been accused of sexual harassment by many women. Also, he is responsible for the nursing home deaths in New York during the pandemic. So the idea that he even thought it was a good idea for him to run for another office so soon, to me, is absolutely ridiculous. But those numbers don't lie. It shows that a lot of young people in New York came out to support Zoran Mandami. Again, he is a self-described Democratic socialist. They came out to support him over Andrew Cuomo. And I think that Andrew Cuomo probably is receiving a slice of humble pie at this point in time. Now, Zoran, I will say, is further left than some of the other DSA candidates that have run before in the past. He's not 100% perfect. He wouldn't be my first choice if I were to pick someone. But I think, when you look at the issues, he ran on favoring BDS. He supported BDS. He said that Israel should be just one state, and under that secular state, Palestinians and Jewish people should have equal rights under the law. And at the time, I think that someone like Andrew Cuomo felt like that was a controversial statement, especially in a city like New York that does have a significantly large Jewish population. But the votes show that people are moving in a different direction. If it were up to me, I wish that Zoran would have run outside of the two-party system, but New York does have pretty strict laws against third-party candidates. But I think this does send a message. Now, he would still have to win in the general election, but people are moving in a different direction, and especially younger people are moving away from Israel and all of the atrocities that Israel represents.
Yeah, people in motion, as a song long before you were born said, a new generation, a social media savvy generation. His videos on TikTok were fantastic. I mean, he's a Muslim, but he's an Indian. So he was doing, speaking Indian language and playing Indian music and appealing to Indians. He's a Muslim by birth. He's a socialist, but with a small s. I saw AOC gave it a small s in her tweet welcoming him. It is a remarkable victory because, as you say, not just the billionaires were behind Cuomo. God knows, was Cuomo the best candidate they could have found? But the media, the New York media, the Post, the Times, the CNN, everyone was trying to destroy Mamdani, and he still won.
More people are moving away from corporate media. And I think we can see that if we look at ratings for CNN, MSNBC. People are looking for other sources of information. And that always makes me proud as someone that does independent media. They're tired of hearing the same story over and over. And even when you look at the war with Iran, I was a little bit nervous in the beginning because I was afraid that some people that supported Gaza would feel differently when it comes to Iran, because we've been so propagandized in the United States that Iran is the enemy, right? So I was very surprised to see a lot of people were not falling for it. Even some conservatives said, no, Americans should not go and fight in these wars. So I think that people are waking up, and that's a great thing. But this win by Zoran, this is basically a slap in the face to Zionists. It's a slap in the face to AIPAC. It shows that you can beat AIPAC. You can can fight against those forces, but you really got to get the people to come out and support you. Now, I know he had received the endorsement from AOC. I think with some of us, we're skeptical because we're like, is he going to turn out to be like another AOC? I mean, only time will tell. He would have to win the general in the first place. But what I always say to people is try not to get too overly emotional about politicians. Sit back and see what they do. But ultimately, you should never look at them as your savior and your hero. You should organize within your communities and help each other. And that's something that I hope people don't put to the side because he just won this primary.
Sure, and the election is another thing. There is an incumbent mayor. He was disgraced, but he's still in the race. And then there's the Republican, Lander, who might now be the recipient of all the Democrats who didn't want Mamdani. So, and maybe, I mean, who knows? Maybe Cuomo himself might even run now as an independent. So it ain't over, but it will never be forgotten, this victory.
That is correct. I would be very shocked if people voted for Eric Adams again, because there was a lot of things that happened under his leadership as mayor of New York City. But I think that people who do vote for like Eric Adams as an independent, it will be voting more so against Zoran. We're talking about more the wealthy people that live in New York City that don't want those types of policies. Basically, they don't want policies that's going to benefit working class people there. They don't want to pay their fair share. They have already threatened that they're going to leave the city if he becomes mayor because they don't want to pay their fair share of taxes. And we received those same types of threats here in Boston, Massachusetts. There were threats that millionaires were going to leave when we implemented the millionaire tax. They're still here. So I think that this is a wake-up call for people. I think Andrew Cuomo is embarrassed. I saw the look on his face, and I think he just can't believe that he did not win this with all the money and the name recognition that he had. So I think that Zoran's campaign definitely outsmarted him.
When you say he's better than the others, I would agree with that. He's definitely more of a socialist than AOC. He's definitely more strongly supportive of the Palestinians than Bernie Sanders. But at the end of the day, he's still a Democrat, right?
That is correct. Also, he did have an appearance on Steve Colbert's show, and this is something that also gave me pause, where he criticized the resistance. And I think we have to fully say this with like our whole breath, right? We have to fully say that under international law, people who are occupied and oppressed have the right to resist, even with armed force. And he's pushing back against that. And that's another thing that gives me pause. And I don't think, even as a political candidate, I don't think you should be afraid to say that. We have to make sure that we get people to understand what the law says. So I think that's really important. And I wonder about that with him.
Now, on the bigger picture, Donald Trump has nominated himself, I think, but next best thing, Israel has nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize for stopping a war that he started. How do you make sense of it all? I follow his pronunciamento on Truth Social and occasionally on Twitter, and I'm left scratching my head. Is this really the President of the United States speaking like this?
Absolutely, it is. And he wouldn't be the first, right, to be nominated for something that he started. For example, Barack Obama also received the Nobel Peace Prize after he had bombed so many people in Libya. We cannot forget about the number of bombs that Barack Obama dropped. This is not something that just happened under the Biden administration or something that's just happening under Donald Trump's administration right now. Both of these parties love war because war manufacturers and the MIC, they believe in this, like they support this and they support those donors. They support the weapon contractors. So they love it when you're having war. Even some of the corporate media that was against Donald Trump started to support him the moment he started dropping, bombs on Iran. So that is a big culture problem that I think that we have in the political space in the United States, at least. But I think that Donald Trump, I think that he is splitting the MAGA base with his actions. There are a number of people that did support Donald Trump solely because he said he was going to bring about peace and he was going to be anti-war. And they're speaking out very vocally. I'm sure, as you've seen, even some of the podcasters, such as Candaceowens, Dave Smith has been very vocal about this, even calling for Donald Trump's impeachment. So there seems to be a split there among the podcaster base, also some of the voter base that say this is not what they voted for. Ultimately, I would think that people are starting to see that our politics in this country is just very much controlled, that the president is mainly just a puppet and he responds to or answers to the deep state that Donald Trump said he was going to fight back against. So it's all controlled. And I think that if you really want to see real change in the electoral sphere, you're going to have to break the system. You cannot keep the system that is currently in place.
Yeah, although we've been crying out for a third party for quite some time in the United States. I don't think the Green Party is that party, although Dr. Jill Stein was a fine candidate for president. Is there any sign of any hope? What about the idea that Elon Musk briefly announced of a third party? Funded presumably by him. Have we heard any more about that, Sabs?
I wouldn't trust anything from Elon Musk at this point in time because he's been known to change his mind. But it reminds me of what Andrew Yang already started, which was the Forward Party, right? Something that was funded by him, where it was just this one big tent and you had Democrats, Republicans, and independents all under one big umbrella, right? So we already do have something like that. You don't hear as much about the Forward Party anymore like you used to when Andrew Yang announced it. But I think that if we're going to have a strong third party in this country, it has to be grassroots. I don't think it should be funded by a billionaire. It has to be from the people in the streets. And I think it needs to be comprised of, you need people that are from the working class. You really do. And the candidates that run, they need to be working class people. They can't be billionaires, right? Like, and we really have to have a movement in this country where you organize people around a core set of demands. Now, my producer created 11 demands, and 11 demands is something that I think a strong third party could get behind. And I think that's how we're really going to get change in this country in the political space. Otherwise, if it's billionaire funded, I think we know at some point they're going to sell out, or they're going to go with the duopoly. Andrew Yang, for example, he started the Ford Party, but then he was also trying to get people to support Kamala Harris. You can't have it both ways. So I think you either need to, if you decide that you're going to build a third party, you need to have a third party that is going to be true opposition to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And you don't get that by being a part of parties that still support the duopoly.
How do we see these 11 demands?
You can find them at 11demands.org, or you can just reach out to me.
Sabrina Salvati, as always, lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls all the way up to Gayatri's social media news roundup. Stay tuned. Big thanks to this week's top donors who visited the new moats.tv website. Thank you very much, all of you. And I'm really going to make this point as firmly as I can. Every one of you has to go to moats.tv and donate something, even if it is £1, even if it is $1, €1. Nothing comes for free. 2 shows a week cannot be produced for free. We need every person watching to donate at least £1, $1, €1. I can't put it more clearly than that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Has Trump's Iran attack launched a new Gulf War? Yes or no? 35,457 have voted, and 67% say yes on Telegram, 53% on X say yes, 67% on the YouTube community poll, and 65% on the YouTube stream say yes. You've still got about 15 minutes to influence that outcome. Get voting on my Telegram, my X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Let's go to Texas, where Cowboy wants to talk about the U.S. attacks on Iran. Cowboy, yeehaw, welcome.
Yes, sir. I tell you what, George, I'm outside of Gonzales, Texas, which is very historical. That's come and take it. You see the battle flags, come and take the cannon. Well, that's where I'm at. But I want to say something. My background is pretty intense in a lot of ways, and do a lot of mining. And I want to break the ice on some things, and I'd like for you to maybe get this out. Is number one, you know, if that's granite, which granite is way harder than concrete ever thought of, the Rockwell hardness is between a 6 and a 7. The next step above that is a diamond. So that's on the MOH scale and the Rockwell hardness. And I have viewed, you know, what I've seen, the aerial photographs of the sites. And when you blast, and anyone that lives where granite's at, because I've had to do a lot of drilling in it in upstate New York and parts of New Hampshire, and carbide tips can't even cut it when we were laying lines in it, you know, for telecom. And, you know, so that right there is hard for me to believe that there was any significant explosions at all. Number two, to break the ice. I'm kind of giving you a little homework here. And look at, you know, the seismic, the Richter scale. If there was any magnitude of explosions that would definitely show up on your GIS scale, on the Richter. I'm just saying. Are you there, George?
Well, there are people, Cowboy, who believe that there were no B-2s, there were no bunker busters, but there was a shower of cruise missile attacks, presumably launched from the sea. I'm not well-versed enough in the way that you are, but it doesn't look, when I look at the pictures, the battle damage assessment, as Scott Ritter has been talking about today, it don't look like the Iranian deep nuclear reactor was destroyed to me. It doesn't look like that to me. I've got to say it.
This is the point that I'm bringing up. Of course, you know, with Scott Ritter and Larry Johnson, the judge, you know, from way back. But I'm telling you from my experience, I won't tell you my professional background kind of get me in trouble on the phone here. But when you look at it, even, you know, before and after the effects, you don't even see hardly any shipment of the, you know, the soils around it. Like I said, the seismic readings, because I was going to try to get with the judge, get with Chris, you know, to say, hey, look, you know, because seismic readings are read around the whole entire world, like a volcano going off or earthquake and stuff like this. But I'm just saying, I don't believe it did anything. And also, you know, listening to Trump there at the NATO made me sick, and listening to him and Rubio and the bar drinker Hegseth for Fox arguing between the reporters there, like it was totally obliterated, yada, yada, yada. And, you know, he's just trying to save face. And then he's up CNN's ass, like bringing out fake news, you know, about the so-called Pentagon leak or what leaks they have. But I would stay neutral to the point because I know the hardness of that granite. You know, I mean, George, that stuff, I'm telling you, I don't even think that thing even made it, you know, 200 feet or that. Was it a dud just to show face with Netanyahu?
Well, of course, the main problem with this conversation that we are having, and I welcome your call very much as a professional in this field, but the main problem with the conversation that we're having is that it is de facto an invitation to Donald Trump to do it again, to finish the job. This is the dilemma we are in. Do we say the Iranian nuclear program is destroyed, so move on? Or do we say actually the Iranian nuclear program was scarcely scratched? Because if it was scarcely scratched, then the warmongers have a case for putting the war back on. Thanks, Cowboy, in Texas. Here's some comments. Evil Tricky Spider says, I bet you when the Mossad sent that message, they didn't think the entire world would be hearing it. They're schizophrenics and mass murderers. And 007 Kyle sends $25. Thank you, George, for the Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you so much, Kyle. And Hunter Dakilla sends $20. Thank you. Says Iran doesn't buy everything from China and Russia because it wants to be as independent as possible. Also, Iran doesn't have the latest tech of air defense from Russia. No, indeed they don't. The question is, well, they offered it, and did they turn it down, and who turned it down, and for what reason did they turn it down? David Giltinan says, Mamdani is still a Democrat at the end of the day. He's the second coming of AOC. Prepare for more disappointment from him. And OTR Trucker says, socialism is the people helping each other. Here in America, we have socialism for the rich. We collect resources from we, the people, and give it to the biggest and the richest. On line 2 is Hoz in London, very popular podcaster these days. Hoz, very good to see you, hear you. Been following your work throughout this emergency. Outstanding. Go ahead.
George, thank you very much for the plug. I appreciate that. The reality is that I have properly engaged in support of Iran and in support of the Palestinians since the 7th of October. And the reason I've rung you is to say to you that it looks like the Palestinians are once again have been left in the bin and they're on their own. I was hoping that Iran, with its pinpoint accuracy and its ability to be able to deliver pain to the Israelis, would turn some of that pain towards with the Israeli occupying forces in Gaza and hurt them to let the people of Gaza breathe. Or if they couldn't do that, as part of the ceasefire arrangements that they've got, they could do something about making the plight of the people in Gaza a part of the ceasefire agreement. Because that, at the end of the day, we all know that Iran is the senior partner in this resistance and has been supporting people. And I think the deaths that I'm seeing every single day in Gaza breaks my heart. And the fact that no one and nothing in the West is doing anything to stop it is breaking my heart even more. Every single time I see Keir Starmer's face stand up in Parliament and gets questioned by the various MPs, the independents, Jeremy and Zara Sultana, Richard Burgeon, Afsana Begum, and all these people who have a conscience, who are questioning it, he just ignores them. David Lammy just ignores them. There's a lack of humanity here towards the Palestinians, and I think nearly after 2 years, someone needs to step in, because you know, and I don't have to tell you, you know how many people they're killing every day with weaponizing of food. And you know, I'm, to be honest with you, as an Iranian, I don't want to see Iranians killed, but I don't want to see any more Palestinians killed. And I want to know what you think is a solution for the Palestinians. Where do they go from here? How many times do they have to get abandoned?
Well, first of all, I don't think you can place the issue of abandonment on Iran. Iran is the one country that didn't abandon them. Iran is the country that provided the sinews of the Palestinian resistance in Gaza, as the resistance leaders have all said publicly, even though Iran is a Shiite country and the Palestinians are 100% Sunni. The only Muslim country, with the exception of Yemen and only half of Yemen, Iran is the only country that did anything to support the Palestinians, both before October 7 and after it. And Iran has punctured the invincibility of the Israeli regime to an extent unheard of, undreamt of by anyone before, least of all by them. They emerged from their air raid shelters every morning, aghast at what had become of their cities. They like to give it out, but they don't like to take it. And that's something that has now been established and will forever be remembered. But I think it's unrealistic to expect Iran alone to liberate Palestine or to end the genocide in Gaza and the land theft and mass murder now happening in the West Bank. That's beyond Iran's capabilities. And one wouldn't want, after all, the destruction of the Islamic Republic of Iran whilst trying. The Iranians have their first priority is to preserve their own country and their own political system and to live to fight another day. A better question is, where are all the others? Where are all the others? Where are the Arabs? The Iranians are not even Arabs. Wain al-Arab? Where are the Arabs? That's a better question, Hoz, as I know that you know. A big shout out to tonight's top donors who've been on to the Moats.tv website since we came on air. Fatima Mevs, David Harkin, Saad Hamdan, James Brogan, and Jeff Woodland. Thank you very much, all of you. And thanks in advance to all of you who are going to leave £1, €1, or $1 on moats.tv before the end of the night. I just know that you are. Ralph is in Bermuda. Let's go there. Who wouldn't? Go ahead, Ralph. Ralph, are you there?
Yeah, hi. Do you hear me, George? How you doing?
All good. Nice to hear from you. What do you want to say?
George, you're doing a brilliant job. I'm so proud of you. And I'm telling you that we need to commend the sacrifice that the Iranian people have made over the last few weeks, but actually it goes back years and decades, in standing up for the Palestinians. And I just want to say this, that I'm also an op-ed writer, George, and I'll tell you this. I once wrote that Gaza is where Western liberal democracy went to die. And the complicity of Western elites, particularly Anglo-American and German elites, in maintaining their support for Israel for nearly 2 years in perpetrating a genocide is just unforgivable. And I'm telling you that we need to put more pressure on the elites within Europe, Britain, the U.S., and the rest of the Anglosphere in doing the right thing. The one thing that I've gotten a little positive about, George, is that it appears that, at least by way of polling, which is not always dependable, that there's a growing divide in the global north between those elites, political elites, and the rank and file Germans, French, British, and the U.S. in opposing what Israel's doing.
Well, I think that latter point is the bull point, Ralph. The result in New York yesterday, don't forget, New York with the largest population of Jewish people outside of Tel Aviv, was a thumping victory for an explicitly pro-Palestinian mayoral candidate supporting boycott, divestment, sanctions, saying he would arrest Netanyahu if he arrived in New York. This is a remarkable indication of the extent to which Israel's political position in Western countries has begun to die. And the same is true, the same will be true in May. I mean, I'm launching our election campaign on Saturday in London. And there's still a few tickets left for that. Maybe we can promote that later, Gayatri. The elections here in May of next year are not just going to be fought on local matters. Even local council elections are not going to be just fought on local matters. Labour is going to be punished in local council elections for the total support that it has given Netanyahu over this entire genocide. And the same will be true, I'm sure, in other Western countries, including in the United States. So it's not that there's a golden billion and there's 7 billion outside. Half of the golden billion, maybe 70% of the golden billion, are completely opposed to the economic and political and security policies of the governments of the golden billion. So don't lose heart. We could very well be in the last days of Western Empire. I don't know if I'll ever see them. I've probably got a better chance of meeting you in Sandy Lane. But the truth is, our children will. Our children are going to see a very different world to the one that we're living in right now. And it will be a case of the first ones now will later be last. Of that, I am sure. Thanks, Ralph. Our legend May in Oklahoma is on the line, and we have to clear the lines for a legend. May, what have you got to say?
Hi, George. You make me laugh. You're so brilliant. Hello to you and Gayatri and your whole team. About 3 weeks ago, I said, I wish Trump would grow a pair and just make a decision. Unfortunately, he temporarily grew a pair and bombed Iran. Not the decision I was hoping for. I want to make sure that everybody listening knows that I don't think there are very many American people who were in favor of that. We don't want to be in another war. We're tired of forever wars. We really want our money to be spent on Americans who need help. And there's so many of them. Oh, my goodness. But I was so disappointed when he did this bombing. And, Trump is like that little kid that nobody liked when he was growing up. And everything he does is trying to buy love. I really honestly believe that. From what little I've heard about his family, no one showed him very much love. They were very demanding, and I don't think he did anything right in their eyes. I'm sorry to say that. But to me, everything he does looks like he's trying to make people love him, appreciate him, and look up to him. And I think while we still need to protect ourselves against the crazy things he's doing, the good news is in a couple of days he'll be doing something different because that's what he does.
Yeah.
So I'm just want to say that
he's careering from one thing to another, May. From one side,
Absolutely.
It's like a man on the, I don't know if you have them in America, these Dodgem cars that you simply can't control. You're careering around at a fun fair in one of these bumper cars. That's what he looks like to me, a man in a Dodgem car that can't control it.
Absolutely. And I just wish that at some point he could feel appreciated, but he never will. No matter what happens, he will never feel appreciated. He will always be trying to up the stakes, up the ante to get proof. So I think the best we can do is tell him we don't agree with this crap and try to survive and maybe try to elect somebody better next time, although I really don't have my hopes up for that. But, George, I appreciate you, and I'm so glad you're there. It's no wonder you're becoming so popular around the world because you tell the truth, whether other people like it or not. And that's so hard to find in our world. So thank you so very much for letting me talk.
God bless you, May, and you're always welcome here. You're a legend. May in Oklahoma. Let me close the poll at 38,040 votes with about a 2/3 majority that Trump has indeed launched a new Gulf War. Let's take one last call before Gayatri. Ali in Atlanta, Georgia, on Ukraine and Russia. Go ahead, Ali.
Assalamu alaikum, George. Can
Alaikum
you hear
salam.
me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
George, I just wanted to thank you for standing on the right side of the history. My question is regarding Russia and Ukraine, and this is for my own edification. Why do you think there is so much distrust on the part of European nations, specifically the Western European nations, vis-a-vis Russia? Because Putin has shown no interest in expanding westwards, either territory-wise or by influence. So where is this distrust coming from? And again, this is coming out of ignorance on my part. Thank you.
Well, of course, far from showing aggressive intention towards the West, Putin can be condemned for being overly trusting and naive, to use a word he used about himself, towards the West. In the early part of his presidency, he sought to join NATO. He sought to join the EU. He was always looking west. It was only with his speech at the Munich Security Conference in, I think, 2008, though it may have been 2007, that he He laid down the red lines that are the red lines that any Russian leader who was cognizant, so I'm not counting Yeltsin, any Russian leader would have drawn those red lines. Namely, you promised us when we withdrew from Eastern Germany and tore down the wall, you promised us that you would not expand your NATO with its missiles 1 inch to the east, and you were lying. And you have now advanced 1,000 kilometers to the east, and now you want us to accept NATO missiles in Ukraine, the very step across which Russia has been invaded 3 times from Europe, from the West. You think we're going to accept that? He accepted the Minsk agreement. He was not a party to it. He didn't negotiate it. He accepted it and was ready to play his part in its implementation, only to discover from the people who signed it, Merkel and Hollande, that it was all a conspiracy by them to deceive Russia whilst building up Ukraine as a military threat to Russia. He was ready to accept the Istanbul Agreement until it was scuppered not by him, but by Boris Johnson on behalf of Joe Biden and Blinken and the American administration. Only then did he recognize the people's republics in the Donbass. Only then did he launch what was a limited military incursion. If Russia had launched a war on Ukraine, it would have looked like Gaza. But it didn't, and he didn't. Even now, the bridges over the Dnipro are all 7 of them, still standing when Putin could destroy them all in an instant. So he's been fighting with kid gloves, far from being a threat. He's the opposite of a threat. The threat comes from us. And now we've got Keir Starmer, who's presiding over a 16% approval rating in the British polls, whose party is facing electoral oblivion in May, trying to tell us that the Russians, the Chinese, and the North Koreans are coming. Imagine. The North Koreans.
George, I agree with you, but my fundamental question was why?
Because the scorpion stings, because it's a scorpion. The Western Empire behaves like it does because it is an empire. And NATO is merely its artillery. NATO is merely its air force, its spear. So, you ask me why? I'm not sure that the public in the West is all that convinced of what their leaders say, but their leaders never stop saying it. They never stop trying to frighten us of Vladimir Putin, Russia, China, and now the latest bogeyman is North Korea. Funny, nobody wanted to talk about North Korea for decades. Now everyone can't get the name out of their mouth. Ali, thanks. I've got another call in Atlanta. Samir. A second call in Atlanta. Go ahead, Samir.
Well, sir, I cannot say how I am disgusted with what's going on. It doesn't make any sense. The human life is my concern. So, people in Gaza, I pray for them. I pray for them. I keep them in my prayer, those souls. So, that's what I care about, sir.
Yeah, and we're all completely broken by the horrific scenes that we've been watching for more than 20 months on our own telephones. not on our own televisions, because they don't show what we see on our telephones. And that's why there's a seismic switch away from television to our own phones, our own computers, our own social media and independent media outlets, precisely because they don't show what you and I have been watching and what hundreds of millions around the world have been watching. And they hope that by not showing it, they will manufacture consent for their government's complicity in it. And when they do show it, they distort it, they lie about it, the terrorist becomes the victim and the victim becomes the terrorist, and all we can do is pray. We can pray, we can boycott, we can sanction. Nobody can force us to buy the goods and services of the people who are up to their neck in the blood of the Palestinian children in Gaza. Nobody can force you to go to McDonald's. Nobody can force you to drink Coca-Cola. Nobody can force you to drink coffee in Starbucks. And if you do, then you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be looking for ways that you can assist those who are assisting the Palestinians and punish those who are assisting the Israeli genocidal aggression. Samir in Atlanta, 2 calls from Atlanta to close the show. I've got to close it now, though, because Gayatri's in the studio with the social media roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Nobody wanted to talk about North Korea before, and now everyone is talking about North Korea. Well, today is the 75th anniversary of the start of the Korean War. So
is it?
It is indeed. So the forgotten war. Forgotten war, not wanting to discuss about it, but now North Korea is everywhere. I mean, it is really a forgotten war. 3 years it lasted.
It's a horrific war, by
horrific
the way.
war. 4 million died.
I think something like a quarter of all the people in Korea died. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, if you're talking statistics, a quarter of them died, but now they are obviously, I mean, the war ended in a stalemate. It's a frozen conflict, which created the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, which is very controversial for the interactions. And when we had Donald Carter on, who recently went to North Korea, he reported that they're no longer agitating each other by playing K-pop music across the border. So North Korea today has, because of its military-first policy, they've got the highest number of military personnel in the world. Some almost 8 million, which is 30% of its population. So
8 million in the North Korean army.
Yeah.
No wonder Starmer's afraid.
Exactly. So
we've got 70,000.
Exactly. So, and their total population is
the Koreans could never live with our food, though, Gayatri. I mean, Korean food is the best food in the world.
It is, yes.
So what would the Korean occupation of Britain look like, having to eat our food?
They would not trade their kimchi with fish and chips, that's for sure.
No.
But obviously, we're looking at North Korea, and we're talking about North Korea because everyone's wondering, where is Iran? Where is this Iran-Israel war heading? Are they aiming for Iran to go towards Libya or more North Korea?
Yeah, well, I mean, if the Iranians have got any sense, they'll now bolt down their relationship with China and with Russia. They will coat themselves in the armor that relationship can bring them. They certainly should not be trusting the European leaders or the North American leaders, not at all.
No, exactly.
We need to go to North Korea, you and I. We could do then the clean sweep of all the sanctioned countries.
Starting in Venezuela and hopefully ending in North Korea.
Yeah.
I would love that. So, continuing with the poll whether Trump's Iran attack has launched the new Gulf War, Rob the musician says, I think that the new Gulf War is going to be more in line of legal battles and exposing corruption in the West. Iran suspending inspections by the IAEA was a wise move, and they have all the arguments for doing so. Also, Iran has yet to release the Israel Gate files. So this
They've
is going
released
to
them partly, but not
all. Not all. So this is going to really expose Western leaders and create a lot of PR headaches. But either way, militarily, Iran has proved its might and helped unify the Arabs and the Persians even more. So big thumbs up for Iran. Definitely amongst the people, I'm not sure about the leaders, but the people in the world have really unified behind Iran. Graham Briggs White says, an empire in decline is at its most dangerous. We will and are suffering from it financially. And on top of that, we have an illegal rogue state with nuclear weapon unchecked by anyone. So either we are starved or barbecued. A rock and a stone place may be where we are headed. So on the bright side, it's a nice day. Is it a nice day?
It wasn't that nice around here. Our skies have been filled with warplanes.
Yep.
I actually could see the pilot in their cockpit.
They were flying extremely low.
Extremely low, extremely fast.
Multiple today.
All day, and apparently it's been true throughout the country. I've got reports from Norfolk, from West Yorkshire, from the Lake District, and from Southwest Scotland.
Yeah.
And most of the Air Force activity is American. The British Air Force has not been particularly active, but the American Air Force has been particularly active over Britain with Chinooks as well as leading edge jets. I'm not sure what the purpose of that. Maybe they're just training. Maybe they're just letting us know who's boss. What kind of independent country allows foreign warplanes to fly crazily fast over houses in their country?
Well, I guess they somehow have to match the 8 million in North Korea.
yeah, I'm not sure how they do against North Korea. North Korea's transformation from a ruin at the end of the Korean War is really something. South Korea's transformation also, of course. It's a really important country now, South Korea, but it had the benefit of enormous economic and political support from the US. The North Koreans did not. But the standard of living in North Korea now is heading towards the standard of living in the South. And the people in the South are beginning to vote in a positive direction.
In that direction, yeah. And if you want to know more, of course, our friend and correspondent based in Moscow, Donald Curter, he has plentiful first-hand experience. And that's why we dined at a North Korean restaurant with him when we were last in Moscow.
We did, a North Korean restaurant in Moscow. Did we break the law? Should we have said that?
It's fine.
Is it perfectly legal?
It's absolutely fine. Why not? There was karaoke as well, just like
karaoke
every other Korean.
In a North Korean restaurant.
Of course.
As well as kimchi, which was to die for.
Now, on Saturday, big day in London.
Big day in London, Saturday, yeah.
If all you based
Saturday
in south of England.
If you're based in the London area, I think there's, a dozen, 15, 20 tickets left. I forget now. Stop World War III. Me and Chris Williamson, former MP, deputy leader of the Workers' Party, and the launch of our election campaign. So if you want to come along, hear what we've got to say, take a selfie or two, we'll be delighted to meet you. How do people get tickets? The tickets are £3, I think, very, very little, just to cover the admin of the whole thing. If you go to the Workers' Party portal, you'll be able to find the booking arrangements. That's all we've got time for, alas. But if we're all still here, if one of these warplanes doesn't unleash a Tomahawk missile through our window, we will be back for the mother of all talk shows on Sunday. The mother ship will be in London on Saturday, but we'll be with you, God willing, on Sunday. So join us and bring another viewer with you. Why don't you? It's been marvelous.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.